It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLab PGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLab PGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at fitlabpgh. Already a fan of FitLab PGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLab PGH and our sister podcast, Moving to Live, firmly believe that movement should be treated as a lifestyle, not just an activity. That's why, in addition to our podcast, 3 times a week, we release movement tips and lifestyle hacks on Instagram and YouTube. We also do a FitLab PGH features every Thursday. We feature a mover in the Pittsburgh area, 2-legged or 4-legged. If you like what you hear from FitLab PGH, please give us some feedback on Apple Podcasts or whatever the app is you listen to. Drop us a message on any of our social media channels. We love to hear from our listeners. And sit back and enjoy an interview that we've done for FitLab PGH and Moving to Live with Brett Jones of StrongFirst and the Functional Movement Systems. I think you'll learn a lot, and you may be surprised that Brett lives right here in Pittsburgh. FitLab PGH and Moving to Live are back with another podcast episode. This is the first time that it is a planned episode that's going to air on both FitLab PGH and Moving to Live. This is because our guest today is a person who is in Pittsburgh, and I'm wondering how many movement people in Pittsburgh actually knows he is in Pittsburgh. But he also teaches literally internationally, and if you ask anybody who's in the know on kettlebell training and who's involved with the functional movement screen going way, way back before YouTube and Instagram were big things, his name is Brett Jones. Brett, thanks for taking time to talk to both FitLab Pittsburgh and Moving to Live.
Ben, it's great to have the opportunity to be on the podcast, and we were chatting a little bit earlier. Like I don't have a good footing in the fitness world in Pittsburgh just because I travel and don't leave my house very often.
And I suspect anybody who is listening outside of Pittsburgh who's in the movement field has probably run across your name. Some people in Pittsburgh also. But if you meet somebody, and right now we're sitting here and you're wearing your StrongFirst Instructor shirt, and you're standing in line in Starbucks and somebody says, "What's StrongFirst? What do you do? What's your 30-second elevator spiel?" So maybe they'll hire you to do something.
So I would say StrongFirst is a school of strength. We teach people how to build strength, pursue, promote strength, because strength has a greater purpose in our lives. And we use tools like the kettlebell, the barbell, and body weight to teach you how to move better and optimize your strength and performance.
And we're going to get more to that in a few minutes. We want to find out a little bit more about how we got to this point, sitting in a third-floor attic of an 1890s house. One of the great things about FitLab PGH interviews is sometimes people invite us to their house, and I get to see parts of the city that I might not otherwise be familiar with. Pittsburgh native, or if not a Pittsburgh native, what brought you here?
So not a Pittsburgh native, born and raised Roanoke, Virginia. Went to school at High Point University, High Point, North Carolina. Master's at Clarion University up in Clarion, PA. Moved to Chatham, Virginia for 2 years, which is where I met Gray. That was 95 to 97. So Gray Cook, Functional Movement Systems. And went, after 2 years there, moved back up to the New Bethlehem area for 8-9 years, out to San Diego for 2 years, back to Pittsburgh for the last 12, coming on 13 years. So it's been some back and forth, been around. But, Pittsburgh certainly, I like to joke that why does any male move anywhere? Probably has to do with his significant other. So my future wife was here. So that's where I was going to be.
And I'm curious, when you went to High Point University, what was your major and what was your career plan when you graduated?
Well, oddly enough, I went for athletic training. So I got my sports medicine degree as planned and worked as an athletic trainer as a grad assistant and then at a military academy in Chatham, Virginia. And then made a shift in 97. I started running a hospital fitness center. And that was really my transition into the fitness world. And it was a hospital fitness center where we had, we were in a PT clinic. So we transitioned a lot of folks from post-rehab to fitness.
And in 97, that was a relatively novel thing to do.
It was. We had the gentleman that owned the PT clinic was a pretty progressive thinker and was pretty ahead of the time. And the hospital was into it as well, just building community and things of that nature. So I worked with people who were coming off of rehab from strokes, from joint replacements, from other orthopedic issues, Parkinson's, neurological conditions, even had some amputees and people in wheelchairs. So as an athletic trainer, I felt like I could really do a good job in adjusting the exercises to fit those individuals. And I didn't know how you were a personal trainer without that background. Like I was kind of thrown into this pretty intense situation and then also got to work with some of the local athletes and things of that nature. So it was 5 years of intense introduction into the fitness world.
I know I've had the opportunity to have a couple of 2-day courses with Dr. Shirley Sarman,
Yes.
who's a well-known physical therapist and not as well-known in the fitness or movement world. And I had her for a hip and back course a couple of years ago. I think I was the only non-physical therapist in the room. And I'm listening to her talk and I'm thinking anybody who's involved in movement should be taking this course because there's so much information, even if you're not treating patients.
Correct. Yeah, she's definitely a great name in the industry and somebody to look at. She's got some really good stuff. I know her and Gray have had some conversations and I'm familiar with her work.
I'm curious, what was it that made you not pursue the traditional athletic training career, which is either I'm going to be an athletic trainer working 100 hours a week in a college setting for very little money, or I'm going to have maybe a little more control for a little bit more money working in a clinic, or maybe if you're fortunate enough, you get hired by a private high school. What was it that said, I'm not going to spend every Friday and Saturday covering athletic events and covering practices all day?
Well, I think you just nailed it. The first job at that military academy in Chatham was very intense. It was a lot of hours, and just kind of honestly just burned me out. And so knowing that I wanted a little more life than continually being on an athletic field or in a training room, and knowing that paperwork was the other part of the clinical realm, which I'm not a fan of. The transition into the fitness world was really interesting for me because I could certainly apply a lot of my orthopedic evaluation rehabilitation skills towards people that were coming in because very few of us are garage kept single owners that were only driven to church. The rest of us have accumulated some mileage and we come in wanting to get fit, but we've got an achy and owie, a pre-existing thing. Yeah, I injured this. It still bothers me sort of thing. And I think most people would resonate with the idea that, a lot of us have started fitness routines only to stop because something ends up aching. We get a knee that hurts, a shoulder that hurts, whatever the case may be. So just being able to apply that, was, really, really good. And then my early contacts with both Pavel and Gray Cook led to this progression into traveling and teaching and DVDs and all this other stuff that occurred over the years. And
I know we've got some people listening in Pittsburgh who are not movement people. If if you could just briefly describe who is Pavel and who is Gray Cook. I know we'll cover them both more in a few minutes, and I'm familiar with them, and many of the movement people are, but somebody in Pittsburgh who just likes to go to the gym may not know who those names are, and they should.
Well, if you're using a kettlebell today, you can thank Pavel, because in the late 1990s, early 2000s, he started kettlebell training, the revival. Kettlebells had been in the country previously, and a little bit in the 50s, which was kind of this golden age of health and fitness, more bodybuilding, the beach muscle sort of thing. But it had been here previously. So in the modern era, if you're using a kettlebell in the States, you can probably thank Pavel for that. He brought it back. I was at his second ever workshop certification in February of 2002. And then was invited to start teaching with him in April of 2003. So I've been teaching with him for 16 years. I've been swinging a kettlebell for 18 plus. And, really, he's been an incredible mentor, opened up a lot of opportunities for me. So, came out of Russia, former military, was actually personal training and doing stuff in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And then somebody discovered him and got him on some products and books, and it just blew up from there. Gray Cook is a physical therapist and innovator of the functional movement systems, which includes both the functional movement screen and the SFMA, or selective functional movement assessment, for clinicians and the healthcare providers. And that is something that when I worked with Gray from 95 to 97, that was kind of in gestation. They were working on it behind the scenes. And then I went to the first FMS workshop ever, which was in 99. So I was very fortunate to be an early adopter within both of those things, and to be just in the right place, right time, and to take that opportunity, and then to be given opportunity by those individuals.
I'm curious how you made the decision to explore kettlebells, because when you're describing the time that you went into the fitness field, that was kind of the golden age of machines and circuit training. It was a little bit after Nautilus, but you still had the machines and the idea that for most fitness facilities, if it wasn't the quote unquote meathead gym where you paid $20 a month and there was maybe a water fountain in the corner, but most fitness facilities was a stream of machines or a row of machines, couple rows, maybe some dumbbells, and rarely, if ever would you see an Olympic platform, or would you see a squat rack. So was your facility different from that, or how did you figure out or explore kettlebells?
So I was right around, and I'm trying to remember the exact time frame. It was 99 or 2000. I went to one of the first Perform Better, Learn by Doing seminars. And Juan Carlos Santana and Diane Vivas were up on stage. And Juan Carlos said something, and up to this point, I'm a hit Jedi. I am a one set to failure, machine-based guy. And I've been, and use the term guy, but I've been that guy. I've been the functional training guy, the body weight guy, the powerlifting guy, the kettlebell guy. If you can pick a pigeonhole, I stuck myself in that pigeonhole.
I like to say you've drank the Kool-Aid from multiple sources.
Yes. Got the t-shirt, cut the sleeves off, mow grass in it. So, as you accumulate, your knowledge and you dive down different rabbit holes, a natural thing to do is to really, and I dive in when I get interested in something, I really try to take a little bit deeper dive than just, the cursory look. So, I'm at this workshop, and I'm a hit Jedi, one set to failure, machine based. And Juan Carlos says, muscles are dumb. They only do what the neurological system tells them to do. And I'm sitting there in the crowd going, yeah, but oh, he's right. And so there was kind of this shift in my mindset. And a friend of mine had recommended one of Pavel's first books, which was Power to the People, which was an ultra minimalist strength routine using the deadlift and a barbell side press. And I bought in. And then the marketing machine kicked in, and I kept hearing about kettlebells. Kettlebells, the next book, The Russian Kettlebell Challenge. And so I got the book, true story, which will sound weird as somebody who's been taking the deep dive and working with Pavel for the last 16 years is I got this book, I read it, and I put it in the drawer because I looked at it and I'm like, I can do all that stuff with a dumbbell. And I put it in the drawer. Back in my mind, it's still working on me. So I pull it back out, and he had some things in back. And so I hooked up a 50-pound dumbbell and decided to try some snatches. I knew how to do a dumbbell snatch, so I just decided to try a couple of the routines that he had for kettlebell snatches with a 50-pound dumbbell. When the EMS revived me, I decided, and that's a joke, by the way, for everybody listening, that is a 100% joke. But it was eye-opening to use these routines. And I thought, you know what? I need to go get some training in this. And so I had missed my opportunity to be at the first workshop in October of 01, but I did get my first kettlebell late in 01.
And I'm curious, at that time, there wasn't really Amazon and Google. Where did you find your first kettlebell? And do you remember what was the shipping cost to get a 30 kilogram kettlebell shipped to your house? So
that first kettlebell is actually sitting right behind you. I painted it yellow at one point so that it would show up better in a photo. And so that is a ever how many year old kettlebell that still looks pretty much brand new, because they're simply hunks of iron that certainly I could gift these to family members. That it was from Dragon Door, which was the company that was Pavel's publisher and who he was working with at that time. And then it was a gift. So I don't know what the shipping cost was, but it was significant. So, and I recently got a 48 kilo bell from Perform Better, and I knew it was coming, and I saw the UPS truck drive up, and so I went out to help the driver. And what I heard as I approached the truck was "ga-gung, ga-gung," because he wasn't even picking it up. He was literally just rolling it on the floor of the truck to get it to the edge. And I'm like, you mind if I take that? So it's definitely, we have many stories in the kettlebell community of the shipping experiences and drivers dropping stuff off going, what is wrong with you people? Like, what the heck are you ordering?
I'll let you in on a little secret if you're looking for more kettlebells, although I probably shouldn't. I haunt Craigslist, and I've got my most recent ones by meeting a gentleman in the parking lot of the Busy Bee to exchange for 2 kettlebells. So you can sometimes save on the shipping cost.
100%.
I think you hit the nail on the head, the fact that they will last forever. I'm sure mine are not as old as yours. I leave some sitting out on my patio that I've actually sprayed with plasticized paint other than the handle so that they're out basically for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, they're really amazing. I mean, if you break a kettlebell, you've done something special. And mine have populated the upstairs office here to a good degree. But yeah, they're forever tools. And I've been doing primarily kettlebell training for the last 18 years.
And I'm curious, we'll take a little bit of a step back here. We're talking with Brett Jones, StrongFirst, involved in kettlebell training, Gray Cook, and functional movement training. I'm curious about what's kept you in the field so long and doing trainings that require you to actually do something rather than stand up there and flash through, probably when you started overhead projector and now into PowerPoint, because we were chatting a little bit before recording, and the life of the person who's making a living as a fitness person / personal trainer is relatively short, because you have to hump it, because you're basically getting paid per client, or you can only work X number of hours a week if you're in a facility where you're a manager. Clearly, you've transitioned from that community hospital-based fitness where you're doing a lot of traveling, which gives you more opportunities. What is it that's allowed you to stay active and be able to still demonstrate the various kettlebell activities almost 20 years after you started?
Well, it's I will say that the techniques, the principles, the things that we teach are that good. It is we fully believe in health and the mission of what you're doing to educate people to move and move well. And if we break down like the logo for FMS, move well, move often, if you drill down on that a little bit, it means move well enough to be able to adapt in a positive fashion to what you're doing. And if you start exercising and you get, an achy, an owie, a hurt, and you have to stop, you're not moving well enough to be able to adapt in a positive fashion. Now, that could be a programming issue. There's many different things that we could drill down on there. But, we, both systems fully, believe, and I may be the first person to come up with this, and probably not, because we're all, thieves of, information. But, the only place fitness comes before health is in the dictionary. And that's why we want to move and be fit. We want to be healthy. And so, not that I haven't had my challenges over those 18 years. I've accumulated 7 or 8 surgeries. I had a pulmonary embolism. I've had a melanoma. I've had, various things that have happened. I had an L-Fabus 1 laminectomy back in 2003. Scar tissue over the last couple of years started to give me some very interesting nerve, sensations, which required a little bit of treatment. But the tool, I've never, and I'm going to say this with all honesty, I've never hurt myself with a kettlebell. I have rehabbed myself and come back from various things, with the kettlebell. I've had 3 different abdominal surgeries. I didn't ask for any of those. Like, I didn't ask to have a left inguinal hernia. I didn't ask to have an appendectomy. Didn't ask for one of those surgical sites not to heal back right and have a ventral hernia that I had to have repaired. Like, these things were, you live a life, you accumulate some mileage. And, I've always been able to, successfully come back and, post back surgery. I went on to, power lift, and, in the raw categories, which means belt only, had a best squat of 518, deadlift of 573. That's in competition. That's not in the gym. That's, AAU, Worlds, back in 2007. So I've come back from a variety of things and gone on to use the principles, the things that we teach, set that movement baseline, we move well enough to adapt in a positive fashion, and then properly program and apply the tools. And I've had, pretty good success.
I'm curious if growing up, were you an active kid growing up, which contributes to you still staying active umpteen decades later?
I would say 2 things. I had a fantastic example in my father. My father, 40 some odd years ago, went from a 3-pack a day smoker to running 3 to 5 days a week and taking on a fitness lifestyle where he would get up 4 in the morning, drive to the club, work out, come home, get ready for work, come back at 6, that sort of thing.
What drove him to do that?
Simply being unhappy with where he was. He wanted to quit smoking, and he knew that exercise could be a good part of that. And, he pursued it. And, to this day, he's, in his early 70s now, still gets to the club 2 to 3 days a week, goes on hikes on the weekend. So I had a really good example from my father, and then I wrestled in high school, which gave me.
I'm curious, have you taught your dad any kettlebell exercises?
I have not. Speaking of accumulated mileage, he has accumulated mileage, and I have clients who do not touch kettlebells. That's part of that. Square pegs don't belong in round holes. So I select the modalities, the information that's going to make the biggest difference to the person I'm working with, and I don't try to apply everything to everyone. And Dad has a few things going on that just make it better for him to maintain his current fitness routine.
And wrestling in high school, did you continue that in college, or were you active in college at all? I know as an athletic training student, having been one myself, you have to make a conscious choice to do that because it's very easy to just say, I'm going to fall into the college experience.
Yes to all of the above. I did not continue with wrestling because I wasn't that good. So I was a little bit of a strong kid and certainly did well, in certain aspects, but it wasn't anything that was going to take me into college. And, I had actually had a back injury wrestling in high school that it was just kind of one of those, better off to move on sort of things. And while I did enjoy working out and doing things like that, my college experience was we were an internship program for the first 3 years. And
so either 1,800 or 2,400 hours of observation, clinical experience, depending on when you were in the internship.
Yes. And I actually accumulated over 3,000 in the time that I was there. So I was busy. And kind of going back to the example I had from my father, my grandfather, just my family in general, you do the work, you put the hours in. and athletic training, as you know, first to show up, last to leave, do the work, what needs done, whatever that may be. And so I brought that with me. It certainly bought into that in my college career, and worked a lot as I progressed there. And then, I put in a lot of hours with the athletic training, and lost my way from a fitness standpoint,
which is unfortunately fairly common in that field.
Yes, because there's an old joke: the mechanic's car gets fixed last, and you begin to treat yourself that way as you get into that field, because you're so busy doing for others and managing this situation that your self-care goes out the window.
Do you think that had anything to do with you getting out of doing the athletic training and moving more in the fitness realm? At some level, you recognize that, this is not something I can maintain long term, or do you think it was more you were looking for something different?
Somewhere in the middle. Certainly lifestyle, and I'm still not good with work-life balance. I still work too much. Now I'm going to say that's a secret to success. You got to put the work in. But I may overdo it from time to time. But definitely a lifestyle aspect was a big one.
Any long-term movement goals that you have now that's just like, okay, I'm approaching half a century, but I'm still moving, still fairly strong? Anything you're saying, boy, this is something I want to take on before I go to the big guy in the sky?
So my goal for this year is, Pavel wrote a book called Simple and Sinister, which is a minimalist kettlebell program, kettlebell swings and get-ups. And he has a simple standard and a sinister standard. And the simple standard is a 32 kilo one-arm swing, 10 sets of 10 in 5 minutes, so 10 reps every 30 seconds for 5 minutes, followed by 1 minute rest, and then one get-up every minute for 10 minutes. So I'm currently training for the sinister standard, which is the 48 kilo bell for the 100 swings in 5 minutes, 10 every 30 seconds, 1 minute rest, one get up every minute for 10 minutes. So that's my current training right now, is to achieve the sinister standard.
And I know people can pull up YouTube videos, or they can pull up Instagram videos and see everybody and his brother demonstrating their new PR. For somebody who's listening to this, who's not really familiar with the movement and fitness field, how long is this training going to take before you say, okay, I think I'm going to try to take on the sinister?
So it's interesting in that I actually started training for sinister last year. And I look forward in my year, and I coordinate some of my training based on what I'm going to be teaching. Like, I will teach a StrongFirst Level 2 workshop in May. And part of that is some double kettlebell drills and bent pressing, and there's our Level 2 skills. So those will become part of my training in the weeks leading up to that event, so that my demonstrations are on point and I'm just ready to teach. So last year I took our barbell certification, StrongFirst Lifter, SFL certification, and ran a program for 8 to 12 weeks getting ready for that certification. So I don't, we were talking earlier about the book Legacy. And there's a chapter, first chapter in Legacy is called Sweep the Shed. And it's about the New Zealand All Blacks, and one of the most successful sport franchises around the globe, over the years. And after a game, you have some of the most highly paid, talented rugby professionals in the world. They go to the locker room, they talk about the game. What went well? What do we need to work on? Who's coming up next? They do their post game. And then these team captains break out brooms and dustpans and vacuums, and they clean the locker room, leaving it better than they found it. Because no job is a small job, and no job is beneath anyone. And so I fully believe in that. So when I went to take our own barbell certification, I'm director of education. I certainly could have just checked that box and said, good to go. But I went, I participated, I was a student, I prepared and met the standards. And then later in the year, I took our bodyweight certification and prepared and met the standards and treated myself as a student at that event. So there were kind of 2 or 3 different phases to my training last year. The overriding goal was Sinister, and it didn't happen. And it didn't happen because later in the year when I was like, okay, this is the X number of weeks, months that I'm heading towards that goal, I started to recognize that I was on the wrong path. I was not, I needed to shift gears. And so I took a little bit of time in December to, I'm not going to say rehab, but just decompress, let my body catch up a little bit. And then my training's been going pretty well this year, thus far to get towards Sinister.
We're talking with Brett Jones. He is the Director of Education for StrongFirst and very involved with functional movement systems. Both of the companies that you're involved with, I know that when people go and take these trainings, this is not a sit alone or sit there and listen and take notes and then go back to your facility and all of a sudden you are the quote unquote expert in your facility on whatever it is you're teaching. Was this, when you were working with both of these companies, and I know you were there almost from the beginning with both of them, was this something that it was a conscious choice of saying, we're going to train movement professionals who can actually do this? And kind of as a follow-up of that, what about somebody who is a movement professional who maybe has some physical problems where they're not able to do some of the activities? So I guess the first question would be, was this a conscious choice with both companies to say, we're going to do practical skill-based certifications where people can not only teach, but they can also do?
100%. There's an old joke that in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. And so we were coming out of a phase, or the industry had shifted to a point where it was a lot of the online test or the, go pay your money, take the multiple choice test, and then you're certified and whatever. Kettlebell training, you have to be able to effectively do it and demonstrate it. And so we have testing standards both for technique and for conditioning. And the conditioning standard is there to make sure you've put your time in. You've done your practice and your due diligence coming into the certification. And the certification, level 1 certification, for example, is a 3-day experience where there's 6 different, in addition to all of the reps that you're doing to practice the skills and the corrections and the drills that we use. There are 6 different practice sessions, plus a grad workout, plus the snatch test. It is an intense 3 days. And we expect that of folks. We want you coming out, and people compare it to some very transformative experiences that they've had. It is an intense setting. Quickly to your question on the medical end of things, we do provide medical exemptions where needed. If you have a history with your shoulder where you can't go overhead, we can work with that. We have our 1-day courses that do not require testing, and they're not certifications, but they're 1-day courses where you pick up a lot of information and education on our various tools. Within the FMS end of things, the light bulb moments when personal trainers, physical therapists, PTs, chiros, don't know why I said physical therapist and PT.
Personal trainer?
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid that one, but fitness folks, personal trainers, all that stuff. The light bulb moments when you screen them and they realize what they can't do, what they assume, and I like to refer to it as the matrix effect, that we all see ourselves as this residual self-image, basically. And if you've seen The Matrix, you know the moment I'm talking about when they drop him back in the program and Morpheus explains, look at yourself. This is your residual self-image. We pretty much freeze frame ourselves at what we considered our best moment. And that's our residual self-image. We see ourselves still capable of X, Y, and Z because that's what we were once able to do. So shining a light on the fact of, where you are and a positive direction of where we can take you is really what was one of the goals. And we want practitioners that have had that experience, and so they can share that positive experience and move forward with their clients and students.
It's interesting when you say that. I know that we talked a little bit. I had herniated a disc, and I had become quite deconditioned because of multiple eye surgeries over the previous years. And a friend and colleague of both of us, Dr. Pete Thomas, when I went to see him for some post-rehab work, said, you have to remember you're not at that level. And rather than saying, I can't do this or trying to do this and getting hurt, back it off and build it up. And although intellectually I could articulate that to other people, it had never occurred to me. And when he said that, I remember the light bulb going on. It's like, oh, well, I'm not capable of going out and riding 45 or 50 miles. No wonder my back hurts when I try to do it. And I took literally 8 or 9 months to get back to the ability to be able to do that. And I can still remember riding down the road and coming to a hill and thinking, I don't know if I can do that. Whereas after getting better conditioned and taking those step-by-steps, the image of what I was is now the image of what I am. And it was an eye-opening experience, and I'm appreciative of somebody pointing it out to me, because sometimes the mirror is dark when you're looking in the mirror.
100%. Rationalization and opposable thumbs. That's pretty much what identifies us as humans. And it's a powerful lesson. I've had to do it multiple times, of stepping back, kind of quote, starting over. I refer to it all the time when I'm working with personal trainers, fitness folks, or rehab folks. I like to say, meet the person you're working with where they are. I'm not going to come get you. I'm not one of those guys that's, I'm not the motivator. Like, I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to scream. I'm good. Like, if you want to do this, cool, come along for the ride. So I'll meet you where you are. And that means a good needs assessment. That means a good screen, blah, blah, blah. You'll be amazed where you can take yourself and others if you'll just meet them where they are. And I think one of the trends right now in the fitness world is this aspirational thing. Like, there are these fitness folks who they want to be aspirational. They're trying to set this image or this thing that they think people will aspire to. I personally do not need that. It actually somewhat irritates me. So I think meeting people where they are, and doing a good job of bringing them where they want to be, really much better direction.
I know this is somewhat controversial for people, and we've talked about this before we started recording. These are both podcasts that believe movement should be treated as a lifestyle. People who are not active recognize that they need to. How do they find somebody who's qualified to teach them? Because for you and me, you know, it's literally decades where it's natural for us to move. We try to find different ways to move, and basically our bachelor's and master's degrees were all around how to make yourself move better and understand what the body does. And what we deem is completely normal, and we could probably sit here and talk about the Krebs cycle. Neither of us wants to do that.
Please.
Somebody who is looking at Christmas time just passed, we're doing this in late January, and they're going, you know, I set this New Year's resolution, but I didn't really do it, but I need to do something, but I don't know where to go. So how do you find somebody who's qualified? Because I suspect we could get on the internet and probably find 15 or 20, we'll just call them personal trainer or fitness certifications. And then if you get into specific exercises, kettlebells, suspension training, weighted barbells, dumbbells, et cetera, there are literally thousands of certifications. So how does somebody figure out, from your experience, if somebody asks you, how do you find somebody who's qualified to teach you to move?
So and I'm going to be, this will be one of my violently self-serving moments. I'm going to say an FMS and a StrongFirst professional have checked some boxes. Now, I would add to that, I like kind of the big four in my mind, the big four, and there's others. There's ISSA, but the big four in my mind are ACE, NSCA, NASM, and ACSM. And those are, if you guys aren't familiar, that's American Council on Exercise, National Strength Conditioning Association, National Academy of Sports Medicine, American College of Sports Medicine. ISSA is International Sports Science Association. And there's a few others that are on that kind of top tier. You can look for an NCCA accredited certification. So that combination is at least an indicator that somebody is not treating this as a hobby. Somebody is treating this as a vocation, and they are serious about being a professional and doing their continuing education. So that's a starting point.
And I think I want to interrupt just a little bit. I interviewed Brian Sutton, who works for NASM, and he actually said the same thing. If you're looking for a starting point, those 4 big certifications, one of those 4. And then I want to hit on something that you mentioned, because I've said this before, and I always have to add an explanation. The fitness or the movement field is a vocation. That's not a bad thing. If you can kind of explain how you came up with that terminology and what you mean by it. I suspect you and I are thinking the same way on it.
Well, you mentioned this earlier, and this is something that I've said on so many occasions. When you take on the responsibility of training someone, their life is in your hands. You can do the wrong thing. Sudden death during exercise is a real thing. Somebody falling and needing a little bit of first aid is a real thing. And so when you treat this as a hobby, I like to work out, so I'm going to get paid to work out sort of a mindset, and you don't take this on as a profession, and you don't begin to understand the seriousness of what we're doing. Medications. Do you know medications and contraindications? Do you understand when they come back with a note from their doctor that says he has a spondylolisthesis? Do you have you checked the box and done your due diligence and really treating this as a serious profession? It is a serious thing to me. And while we might look at group exercise in a slightly different fashion because it's a little bit different setting, and there's some responsibility placed on the facility to make sure they're doing their due diligence on the front end to catch those people that should probably get a medical evaluation or something before they start. As a personal trainer, strength coach, I certainly feel that this is something that I think will end up with licensure. I think we'll end up with actually treating this as a career. My wife is an LMT, massage therapist, for 20 plus years, and massage therapist went through licensure a while back. And they did that to not only protect the massage therapist, but protect the people that are receiving those services. So I think there's a way to turn the corner and treat this as a serious career. Typical career span in the fitness world, 18 months to 3 years. It is a high burnout, high turnover thing. People that get in and think I'm going to make a bunch of money, get ready to grind.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people that you talk to say, I get in it because I like to work out, and then they don't work out because they don't have time.
Yes.
I think what is not being said that people need to think about is when it turns the corner and becomes a profession, and a mutual acquaintance of us, Eric Malzone, is involved in working to help make that by teaching people to market themselves properly. That's going to be a big change for a lot of fitness facilities, because a lot of them rely heavily on people who are not full-time employees. They are guest instructors, if that's the terminology, or I don't know what the terminology is, part-time.
There's been a shift in the industry from both a studio mindset and a big box gym mindset. I don't know that we'll ever fully get away from people being part-time employees, just because of offering benefits is such an expense to the facility. But most facilities now will no longer do subcontractors; they will do employees. And there's the reasoning behind that is just greater control and a variety of tax and business reasons. But it is slowly turning that corner to where, as the facilities are required to have employees, not just subcontractors, that's part of that changing of the industry to become more serious and treat it more as a career.
We're talking with Brett Jones. He is involved with the Functional Movement Systems and Director of Education for StrongFirst. Going to kind of pick your brain a little bit, because I know there's a lot of information out there. So people who maybe are movement aficionados, or people who are listening to this from the FitLab PGH line and are not movement and exercise professionals, you've mentioned personal trainers, you've mentioned strength coaches. In your mind and with your experience, what's the difference? Because I know one of the trends that you see if you start looking on social media, don't believe everything you see on social media, is it's not just the gentleman or the lady who's working with major college football as a strength coach who's calling themselves coach or is advertising themselves as a strength coach. It's the person who's teaching the weekend boot camp class, where sometimes the programming is good, sometimes it isn't. We don't need to talk about that, but people are listening. What's the difference between a strength coach and a personal trainer? Or are they one and the same, or what's your definition?
I think if you there's a NSCA, CSCS, CSCC, which is a college strength coach certification. There are a couple of certifications out there that are supposed to be or are intended towards those individuals that are working within a sporting setting. So if I am a strength coach, the picture in my mind that comes up is the person that's working with that is the strength coach for a ladies basketball team at a university. That's a person that is responsible for a high school, college style program. The title coach is one that is easily given to a variety of individuals. And, I certainly had coaches in my various sports. And the idea of a coach and being somebody who's teaching and assisting in development is appealing from a personal training standpoint. But I think we're better off drawing those clear lines, because the person that's good with 50 youth athletes in the room and managing a really good program for those youth athletes might not do such a great job with Executive Jane, who has shoulder pain. There's really different things going on there. Both can learn from one another and both can enhance the field. But in my mind, if you call yourself a coach, I expect you to be working with some sort of team in some sort of high school, college, or club situation. If you call yourself a personal trainer, I expect you to be working with people.
I'd actually add a little bit on that. If you're a coach, if you're working one-on-one with endurance athletes who maybe don't have a team.
100%. And that's, there are some really unique situations within running and triathletes and things of that situation that do escape the norm of the strength conditioning field. 100%.
I want to switch gears a little bit again and talk a little bit about StrongFirst and First Functional Movements Systems. You mentioned you were kind of there and you met Gray Cook at the beginning. How did that come up? First of all, what are functional movement systems for people who have never heard of this? Who are they for?
So functional movement systems has two branches. We have a functional movement screen, which is like an entrance test. And I don't want to say test because there's no pass fail. It's an entrance evaluation for the person that's coming in to exercise. So again, I want to be sure that you move well enough to be able to adapt in a positive fashion to the stress I'm going to place you under. We cause adaptation by imposing stress. And then there's a selective functional movement assessment, which is a SFMA, which is an evaluation or assessment diagnostic technique, really, for athletic trainers, healthcare providers, athletic trainers, PTs, docs, so that they can use a movement-based approach in assessing an injury situation.
And are there specific requirements, certifications, licensures for somebody to come and take either one of those classes? We'll have a link to what they are in the show notes. So
for the SFMA to get certified, you need to be a healthcare provider. You need to be a PT, a doctor, a chiro, an AT.
Would a licensed massage therapist count as that, since they also have licensure typically through a state medical board?
At this time, I don't believe so. I could be wrong on that. They make changes every now and then that they don't send it down the chain. But I don't think we've opened that up to the massage therapist. We do allow a variety of professionals to audit the course. You can go see, because the principles are good. The concept of regional dependence, interdependence, and things like that are good for all professionals to know. For the FMS end of things, that is open to everyone. I've had physical education coaches, sport coaches. I've had PTs, chiros, doctors, athletic trainers, and fitness professionals in the room. So those are kind of the requirements there. But the concept, if you have pain, you go down the SFMA rabbit hole. If you have pain, you're not an FMS client, because there's pain on board, and pain alters how you move. And we need to address that before we really start trying to build your fitness.
And in simple terms, for people who are not really familiar, the FMS is a series of specific tests to identify, for lack of a better term, parts of the body that either don't move well or don't move correctly based on a set of criteria.
Correct. So it's 7 different movement patterns. We're going to take you through, and they're very simple. And like I said, there's no pass fail. We do rate and rank, so you can score a 3, 2, and a 1, or a 0. 0 means you had pain. You are back down that SFMA rabbit hole, and you need to get that pain addressed. 3 means you did what I asked. 2 means you did it, but there was a little compensation. And 1 means you couldn't do it. We're really only concerned about the 1s and the 0s. Like, we're just trying to make sure, and it's not a high bar, actually. It's basic, fundamental movement, and we want to make sure that you move well enough to adapt in a positive fashion to the stress you're placed under.
I'm curious, you've been teaching this for almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. What percentage of people who come in to take the FMS would you estimate are able to score a 3 or higher on all 7 of the tests?
I've never seen a 21. So the best you can score is a 21. I've never seen one. Gray has only seen a handful. So, and 3 is not the goal. As long as you're 2s with no asymmetries, and 5 of the tests give us a right and a left score. So you can have a 2-1 score on some of the tests, some of the screens. So, that I've very rare that somebody walks in, and now are people come in and get 3s on some of the tests? Absolutely. But somebody that comes in and dunks a 21 on the first go round, I've never seen it.
You ever seen anybody score on the test who comes for the certification a 0 across the board, all 7 tests? Actually, no, if they were a 0, they'd be farmed out because they would have pain, they would go to the more significant one. Anybody ever get a 7?
Oh, yes. Yes. I had a client, a student at one point, who was post-rehab and walked in the door and scored a 7. 1s on everything. And which is great. We got a nice level playing field. And I gave him 5 things to do. And the way we teach within FMS and the things we do, we make sure if I give you a drill, I know it made a difference in the thing I was trying to change. I don't give you 5 things and hope something happens. I look for change right now. So I had found the 5 things that this individual needed. He went away for 2 weeks and did his work, and I would observe him from time to time, and he was just a great student, great client. 2 weeks later, he was a 14. And so that is the kind of change that we actually look for within the FMS. We're just identifying things that need to be a little bit better, and we have strategies and techniques to make those things better. And so that's the way we address things. If you get a 0, I want to know why you got pain. Pain's not normal. You might expect it, but that doesn't mean it's normal. Like those are 2 completely different conversations. And so we want to be sure that pain has a reason, a name, and name. That's a whole other deep, dark rabbit hole, because people love to own their situations and own their pain. But yeah, we want to make sure that we get medical clearance, make sure we're not dealing with anything weird. And you've been a clinician in the healthcare field for long enough. You know that you've heard the nightmare stories where somebody ignored something for X number of years, and by the time they get it checked, it's something really serious that they should have gotten checked years ago. So, yeah, we want to make sure we got a nice, clear playing field, and then we can move forward.
And I know we joked towards the beginning of the interview about you having drank the Kool-Aid in multiple places. I think it's important to say with what the functional movement screen has done is it's not the Kool-Aid. I've actually heard Gray Cook say, look, this is what we do. This is why we do it. If you want to learn it, great. If you don't want to learn it, great also. So it's not one of those things that says, man, if you're not doing the FMS, you're an idiot. Here's a tool that you can possibly add to your toolbox that might help you make clients move better.
100%. And the question for fitness professionals is, how are you going to get started with somebody? Like, this is just a starting point. Let's just check the baseline. Let's make sure there's not any pain before I throw you under load. Let's make sure you can access these movement patterns that we're going to use in our exercises anyway. And let's just keep an eye on the baseline. Be sure that a good exercise routine should help you move well. And that's actually kind of one of the things, like, we've reached a point, when you look at the old systems, and I'm going back to even the Greeks and some very old, most of what we do for training either comes from a military or quote gymnastic style of training. And gymnastic style of training, not meaning competitive gymnastics, but they were termed gymnastic style of training by the Swedish system, P.H. Ling, who developed massage. Swedish, if you've ever had a Swedish massage, you can thank P.H. Ling. And he was a member or taught this Swedish gymnastics program, and it actually became physical therapy. That was more of a rehabilitative arm of this gymnastic style of training. Whereas if you look at the Germans and the Turnverein system, you have more of a physical training system that was meant to build soldiers, because traditional training systems were based on martial, restorative, and pedagogical. And martial was either training a soldier or training your ability to respond appropriately to aggression. Restorative were techniques meant to bring you back to healthy. And pedagogical was the body of knowledge that supported that system. Fitness is our martial art. We've turned fitness into a goal in and of itself. The pommel horse in gymnastics was actually a tool initially to help soldiers learn to fight on horseback. It had nothing to do with competitive gymnastics and some of the tricks and very impressive, amazing things that they do now. So kind of a long-winded response, but I get started on those and I get a little passionate about it because there is this deep history to what we do. And I think it's fascinating.
Everybody borrows from somebody else, whether they like it or not.
Whenever somebody says I invented something, I will pull up a book from 1569, De Arte Gymnastica by Mercury Alice. And in there is dumbbell training, medicine ball training, single leg training, body weight, all of the things. And this was published in 1569. And you can go back to the Greeks and they were probably all doing it back then.
I know one of the hot things in movement and fitness now are Indian clubs and maces. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first decided I was going to try a little Indian club 4 or 5 years ago and pulled some very good YouTube videos up. I think a couple of them were of you, and happened to mention to my dad, who's in his 80s. He goes, "Oh yeah, I remember soldiers doing that in World War I and shortly before Korea."
100%.
Excuse me, World War II. I don't want to age him too much.
That they were part of the Army physical training manual until the late 80s. They actually, so they have been in there for a significant period of time. Clubs are something that have a 5,000 plus year history. The traditional name was Indian War Clubs. They were a martial component to some of the training systems coming out of India. So when we say Indian War Clubs, we're not saying Native American. It's from India, and they have a tremendous history, and I use them still. I do enough heavy stuff, like especially right now training for Sinister, and this is some of the training I'm doing. I need light, restorative, fast, fun, kind of a moving meditation.
As somebody who spends a lot of time on the computer, I know there's nothing like going in the backyard and spending 10 or 15 minutes swinging a light 1 pound set of Indian clubs. All of a sudden that hunched over computer system goes away. I've actually got a client that I work with who bought his own pair. He does a fair amount of traveling. And if he drives to a job site or something, if he's away from where people don't see him, he'll swing the Indian clubs there or in his hotel room to avoid that forward head flexed position that we all like to get into.
Awesome. And they are, obviously, TSA does not like them. You're not going to be able to carry them on. You could check them, but you're not going to be able to carry them on. But they are, that's been a really nice tool.
And I'm curious with the FMS system, how did you get involved? I mean, you were in the right place at the right time to meet Gray Cook, but how did you basically stick your head in the rabbit hole and say, hey, this is pretty cool. Can I come along for the ride and help with this?
So I had left Chatham in 97 and really lost touch with Gray. 2003 or 4, I put out a video, Kettlebell Basics for Strength Coaches, Personal Trainers. Gray got that video and said, that can't be the fanny pack wearing athletic trainer from Hargrave. So, and that's all athletic trainers just spit coffee out because, we're definitely known for that. So we got back in touch. He had gotten interested in kettlebell training, what Pavel was doing. I certainly had kind of continued that movement-based approach and brought some of that to the techniques and things we were doing within StrongFirst. And we got together and led to the development of FMS Level 2, the Secrets of DVD series, and really progressing the corrective exercise curriculum within functional movement.
And then also curious about your involvement and how you got involved with StrongFirst. You mentioned you went to the second ever kettlebell training class by Pavel in the U.S.
Yes.
And then clearly you did something that made him say, hey, this is somebody that probably has something going on that could be beneficial for other people. How did that go about?
So I was there in February of 2002. And then in March of 2003, I decided to go to the Arnold Fitness Classic. And this is back in the RKC days and working with Dragon Door. And they had a booth at the Arnold Fitness Classic. So my ex and I went to the convention center. It took 45 minutes to get through the door to the booth. And they were like 3 doors down. It's so packed. If you've ever been, it's just a madhouse. While we were there, I hopped right in to helping answer questions and coach people. And we had this, at the time, it was a 40-kilo military press challenge. And if you could press it, you got an ebook. It was one of those things you do at trade shows. And so I took over and started doing these things. And Pavel invited me to become an instructor at dinner that night, and then have just progressed from there.
And you've done a great job of describing what the FMS is about and the certifications and the classes. What about StrongFirst? What do they offer? I mean, obviously kettlebell training, but from what you've said, it's a little bit more than that. Somebody's listening to this and they're like, man, I'm not so much interested in the FMS, although I think you've made a good case for why anybody involved with movement should at least have a good basic knowledge of that, or something similar to that, some way to kind of as a calibration for your athletes or for your clients.
Yes.
What about StrongFirst?
So StrongFirst offers both courses, which are one-day experiences for you, the individual, to get your form tuned up and learn our principles and techniques in the barbell, body weight, and kettlebell training. And
by barbell, are we talking bench press or everything?
For the one-day course, we do the military press, a squat, and deadlift. And I'm not going to say anything. For the body weight section, we give progressions towards one-arm push-up, single leg squat, pull-ups, things of that nature. Within the kettlebell course, we look at the swing, the get-up, military press, and goblet squat. So foundational movements. And then the certifications are intensive experiences that are meant to turn out instructors. So the goal of the weekend is to not only get the individual's form up to StrongFirst standards, make sure they understand our techniques and our principles, but to be sure they can then coach that. So the weekend is intensive on working within their teams to coach each other, to spot the right thing that needs to be changed, selecting the right tool to make that change, and really building instructors that can then take those techniques home and use them effectively with their students. StrongFirst, we don't say we have clients, we have students. Very similar to like a martial arts school. We do refer to ourselves as a school of strength. We have a code of conduct. We hold ourselves to a little bit higher standards because we believe the mission of StrongFirst is to pursue, promote, and practice strength, because we believe strength has a greater purpose. And you can see that in a variety of ways. That could be somebody rehabbing from an injury, somebody dealing with a major illness. That could be an athlete accomplishing something. We believe strength is an overriding principle and master quality. If you look at Metviev's quote, that strength is the master quality upon which all other physical qualities are built.
I'm curious. I know that many fitness facilities like to offer kettlebell classes. Is there something in StrongFirst that you talk about this as far as a recommended max number of clients or customers in a class?
That is a very moving target. I was part of one of the first kettlebell studios in the nation in San Diego called Iron Core back in 2004, 2000 to 2006. And we would have 5 people sign up online and 15 to 17 people show up for class. And when you're a struggling studio, you're not turning people away. You go ahead and make the class work. And so there are effective techniques to work with a variety of individuals. Of course, space is a primary concern. Can you safely get everybody in this space and perform these exercises? Some kettlebell drills take a little bit of a footprint to do safely. So it's really dependent on their space and their experience as an instructor. And then, pardon me, within the group fitness field, it's very interesting because you have the ideal situation where people sign up to participate in classes and they actually have to go through some sort of screening process or learning process. Even at this studio in 2004, we would bring people in. If you wanted to sign up, you had to show up for a Saturday 2 to 3 hour session where we looked at how you moved. We taught you the basic techniques so that first time in class, you're not learning how to deadlift a kettlebell or do a get up. So that's the ideal world where you've kind of pre-screened people. You can communicate with that instructor and say, hey, Bob or Judy's coming in and watch out for this. We found this in their eval. Pardon me. The less ideal situation is where it's a consistent group. The same 5 to 10 people are showing up for their 5:30 class every night. And so you can progress those people in a different way. And the thing that happens most often is the class where you don't know who's coming in the door. You're just going to get 5 to 10 people. Could be their first class, could be their 100th class. You just don't know who's walking through the door. That becomes very challenging as an instructor. And the skill of an instructor to quickly screen the room, spot somebody that might be doing something not great, and offer a regression. Hey, swings are looking a little bit off today. Do me a favor and just deadlift for this segment. And you just make a quick change and make sure that individual still gets their session. They're still part of the class, but you're able to progress and regress 1 to 2, 3 steps, any drill you select for your class, so that you safely work with those folks.
I'm going to ask a question that I suspect will be a hot button with you because I have, through my experiences, given my age and also just looking around and being curious there, it's not uncommon to walk into a facility that has kettlebells and the heaviest kettlebell is 15 pounds. Or I know Pavel's kettlebells are in kilograms. Comments on that? I know I'm putting you on the spot, and if you don't want to say it, I'll edit this out.
Well, for a lot of facilities, it's a safety thing. They may not have instructors and people that are skilled in teaching it. They want to simply be able to say, we have kettlebells. And so they buy some light ones, knowing that there's just reduced, we're going to call it risk, in having those light kettlebells. So in some cases, it's a really good decision by the facility. They don't have the professionals who are skilled in teaching that kettlebell techniques and tools. So there's times where I'm like, good decision. Like that's exactly what you should have done. Hopefully that's a facility that maybe it generates some interest and they look towards getting a kettlebell instructor and somebody that can come in and really build a program around that. We have a joke about our SFL standards, our StrongFirst lifter standards, and you can look those up on strongfirst.com and look at the SFL. Pavel has a joke that if you can meet these standards, and it's a 2 times body weight deadlift and a couple other things, but he has a joke that the StrongFirst, the SFL standards don't mean you're strong, just means you're not weak. And so we expect people to build strength. And that's an interesting thing for folks because people perceive weights differently than real life. Like people will lug around their 30-pound kid, but be afraid to pick up more than a 10-pound dumbbell. Like there's a disconnect there. You're throwing around, you love to garden. So you're picking up 25 to 50-pound bags of whatever to garden and do whatever with. But again, a 25-pound dumbbell is frightening. So obviously a skilled instructor building strength with the proper techniques and principles can take you to building much higher levels of strength.
somebody's listening to this with StrongFirst and the kettlebell training, the one-day courses. Mm-hmm. We've talked a fair amount about various fitness and movement facilities. I'm sitting here with you in your office and you've got 6 or 7 kettlebells, and I suspect that you don't always go to a facility, that sometimes your workout takes place here on the 3rd floor. Your wife and kids may say, "Hey, stop, Dad, you're banging the kettlebell too hard." But it has the unique ability that with 2 or 3 kettlebells, the weight or mass, depending on the person, you can get a pretty good full body workout. Would one of these one-day StrongFirst classes be good for somebody who says, "Man, I want to learn more about this and I want to be able to do it at home because I'd rather spend whatever the cost is for this rather than the cost of a gym membership every month"?
100%. And what I'm about to say is not sad, but I have trained on my own primarily for the last 16 to 18 years. Part of that is my travel schedule and back and forth, and just the fact that I could have 1 or 2 kettlebells at home and get these really accomplish great results. Even when I was powerlifting, like a lot of people didn't. I just was training at odd times. I've always had a schedule where I could train not at the typical times and do my own thing. I fully believe that kettlebell training can be a standalone tool. Now, just like anything else, I'm usually happy with pizza, but adding a salad is also good, right? So, it's not that I want to eat pizza forever, but I enjoy pizza. I can do that pretty regularly, but it's better. Life is better with a salad and some other stuff involved. So kettlebell training is the same way. I think it forms a tremendous foundation for a fitness practice. And then having 12 to 24 weeks out of a year where you specialize more in barbell can be a tremendous way to build strength. Having a 12-week period where you specialize more in body weight, great way to hit a different angle on your strength. Maybe you have a hike, a vacation coming up, the Machu Picchu or whatever, where you're going to be doing some hiking and climbing. You want to be able to get out and do that. So my kettlebell practice supports my life. I like to hike, so I stay fit so that I can go hike. I stay fit so that I can go teach. So I fully believe that, I've always looked at it as kind of the apartment dweller's solution, that, you can have a couple of bells and a little bit of space and really get amazing things done.
We're talking with Brett Jones. He is the Director of Education for StrongFirst and an advisory board member for Functional Movement Systems. I'm curious, we've alluded to a little bit in the recording and also talked about it prior to recording, the fact that you do a hell of a lot of traveling for your teaching.
I do. How
do you prioritize the movement? Because having done a fair amount of traveling, not close to you, I know that sometimes, especially when you're going internationally or across the country to California, and you land, the last thing you want to do is some sort of movement. How do you manage to make that a priority? Because it's really easy to say, "Nah, I'm just going to go have a beer," or "I'm just going to go to bed."
Through FMS, a group called Ground Force Method, which teaches body weight movement skill, and StrongFirst, both our joint mobility and relaxation techniques. I have a wide variety of things that I need no equipment for, that I can. I remember landing, and I was teaching in Amsterdam, and I remember landing and going to the room and doing a movement practice right there in a. It was actually a pretty good sized room for Europe, and doing a movement practice to shake off the trip. I'm also very fortunate in that usually I'm going to teach something physical where I am going to be demonstrating, I'm going to be moving anyway. So that helps to a certain degree, because I'm also demonstrating how to not do things. And so, it's a wide variety of things that I'm doing. And then it's usually 10 hours a day of teaching. And, so there's a lot of mental and physical, work that goes into my teaching days. And so, that's how I do it. I can get up in the morning, do a little 15-minute movement practice, boom, ready for my day. Then I'm going to go do something typically pretty physical for the rest of the day, and then hit repeat for the next day.
I'm curious, and I'm asking this because I've got a good friend in the industry who shall remain nameless, who managed to fracture his foot while demonstrating a drill at a training that he was done. And essentially, not the smartest thing, but he sucked it up and finished the day. I'm curious, have you ever injured yourself while doing some of the teaching and realized as you did it, oh crap, this is going to be a rough day or a couple of days?
I have never injured myself in the process of teaching. However, I have had days where I've had nerve pain from that scar tissue and stuff from my back. I have a situation with my right knee where I've got 6th grade. I tore my MCL, and then I had a cartilage tear, and so it'll swell up and get irritated from time to time. So have I gone into certain workshops either getting flared up from the travel, because you spend enough time on an airplane, you realize just how not good those things are for your health. And so, I've gone into situations, and what's really amazing is I've gone in to teach kettlebell training or FMS, and I feel better by the time the day is done. Our techniques, our principles, the things we're doing are actually very effective for having a great movement practice and movement lifestyle.
I think that's a great final statement to really bring home FitLab PGH and Moving to Live movement. It's a lifestyle, not just an activity. Brad, I want to thank you for opening up your house and taking time to talk to me.
100%. Ben, it's been great. I look forward to future opportunities.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLab PGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fitlabpgh and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLab PGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.